Hello everyone and welcome back to Callsign Charlie Models. Andre here, and we have another big box inbox review today, and this one is of the Hobby Boss 1/32 scale B-24J Liberator right here. As you see, this is a massive box going through. So again, lovely box art on the top. Then we go off to the sides here, and then we have the color schemes that we will be looking at later on, and then we also have some CAD drawings of the actual model. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get everything set up and to the side, and then we can start going through all the instructions and decals and plastic on here. So give me 1 second, I'll be right back. Alright, so now moving on with the instructions, we have the typical Hobby Boss format with the instructions, a nice little booklet right here. Starting off, we have a read before operation or assembly description right here, and then we also have the legend of symbols to be used right here. Then we open up the page, and then we have the sprue call out going on with all the sprues. There are a lot of sprues in this kit as well, and then we have some rubber tires, and it looks like some metal undercarriage as well, and then our decals and a photo etch fret right here. Alright, so starting off with the kit, we have our interior that we're getting started with their cockpit flight deck right here, and then adding in the pilot seats, and then our instrument panel right in here, getting all that on, and then our back bulkhead right there, and then our forward bulkhead right here. Then after that, we're starting with the nose landing gear and the landing gear well, adding a little bit of detail to all that, so you'll have a little bit of detail in there. And then after that, we're getting the flight deck attached to the bottom section with the landing gear, and then we have a little bit of a interior back here. We do have, it says we have a full interior in this kit. So just moving around, adding a lot of little pieces and seats to our cockpit right there. And then we're starting off with our bomb bay, getting our bomb bay started, and we have some parts to add into that, and then we have our bombs going on right in there. After that's all done, we're getting the forward section, the bomb bay, and the tail section all connected right there. Just a couple pieces to go on. Then after that, we're working on our turret for, I don't know if this is the aft turret or the forward turret, but we will have to see about that. Might be two of them. Or, nope, there's two different turrets right here. Alright, so working on our turrets, adding all those in, and then we have our belly turret right here going on, and then we have the fuselage have to paint it, and then we have a few other detail parts to go into here. Does look like the interior is going to be fairly well detailed on this kit. So again, moving on to the other side, we have a few other parts to add on, and then just moving right along, bunch of parts going on to the interior of this kit. And again, repeating for the other side, same thing, adding more parts to all the interior side. Then after that's all done, we are attaching the flight deck, bomb bay, and rear deck to the fuselage half, along with our bottom turret right here. And then we have our upper turret going on as well, getting all that assembled. And then we have, it looks like to be a massive wing spar, which is going to be needed for this kit because the wings are going to be very long on this kit, so definitely need a massive wing spar to help with support of that weight. Then after that, we're adding in our front canopy section, our top turret, and then some ailerons right here, and then the astrodome right there. After that's all done, we're adding in our bomb bay doors. Can't tell if we have the option. Yep, we do have the option of having them in the open or closed position. And then we're adding in our landing gear doors and also the bombardier's glass right here. After that's done, it looks like we're starting on our landing gear wells for our wings, getting that all done, and then we're getting our wings, adding our landing gear well, and then a couple other pieces to it, including nav lights going on there, and the same repeat for the other side. Then we're getting our wings together. We have to sandwich them on top of the wing spars. You don't slide them in, you kind of sandwich them over the wing spars. So that's really going to help with the strength of the wings right here. Also adding in our ailerons as well. So after that, we're starting off with our engines, getting our engines all done, and then getting repeat for the other wing. All the other stuff is same as the other wing. After that's done, we're working on our main landing gear. Getting our main landing gear done. Does have metal struts, so it's really going to help with the strength of support on all the weight of this kit. And then after that, we are starting our engines. Looks like the engines might be a little bit basic on this kit. Might want to look into getting some aftermarket engines if they are available. After that, we're starting on our tailplane, getting our tailplane all together, along with our vertical stabilizers and rudders right there. And then the last step is getting the tailplane attached to the fuselage, along with a couple other antenna going on here. So some nice detail work to that. So up next we have our color callouts here. Again, a few decent or very nice options right in here. We got the aluminum body right here, Mayakin right here, very nice on that with the yellow tail. I do like that one. And then we flip it over to the other side. Then we have the olive drab with the yellow and black stripe on it. Again, very nice. I can't tell what that one is. This one is War Goddess for the olive drab. And then we have another one down on the bottom for aluminum. Again, very nice nose art right there. I'm thinking for this one, I will be doing this guy right here, because I'm going to do this one in the aluminum, and then the B-24D I'm going to do in the olive drab or the desert tan. So we'll have to see about which one we decide to go with on that. Alright, so moving on, we have our decals, and the decals do look nice. They are, the carrier film does seem a little bit glossy on that, and the artwork, so the War Goddess one doesn't, the artwork looks so. The Mayakin one looks good. I like that one. And then going my way, also the face on the artwork doesn't look too nice. They look a little too cartoonish for the figures right here, but everything else does look rather nice. And there's not too many like stencils and all that, so we might have to look into seeing if there's an aftermarket decal sheet that has all the stencils for the B-24. Alright, looking at our landing gear, I was wrong. They are not metal, which is rather disappointing. This kit is going to be very large, so I don't know how this is going to support the weight of the kit. Because, I mean, I'm just putting a little bit of tension on it, and I'm already flexing the landing gear right here. So that is something definitely I'm going to look into, is getting some aftermarket landing gear, metal landing gear for this kit. We have, both of them are the same thing on that, and then we have the other one right here for our nose landing gear. Again, kind of surprised that they went with plastic landing gear on this kit. Up next we have our rubber wheels. Again, they're okay. The tread is okay. There's a little seam line down the middle right here that you'll have to scrape off, and there's no sidewall detail to it. Again, I think resin wheels, I'm pretty sure Edward does have some resin wheels out there for this kit, but that will definitely, they are a stiff rubber though. That's nice, but I mean, again, the detail on the rubber is so. Okay, moving on to our first clear parts. This is up on the nose, and again, this looks pretty nice. Around the curve, there is some distortion and magnification around the curved parts, and on the flat parts, they do look okay. But except for on this dome, it does look alright as well. But that's how our clear parts are looking. We have a bag of rubber ammo belts right here. Again, the detail on it, you can see the bullets in here, so definitely gonna want to paint and weather that up, even though you probably won't be able to see much of it. But that's how that's looking. Then we have a photo etch sheet right here. These are going to be maybe your push rods or spark plug wires for your engines. We'll have to see how that's going to look. Again, I might look into getting some aftermarket engines for this kit if they are available. But the photo etch is pretty thick. Hobby Boss is a subsidiary of Trumpeter, so this is basically Trumpeter photo etch right here. Alright, so moving on to our turret clear parts, and these actually do look very, very nice. Nice and clear. You're definitely going to be able to see all the detail that's inside the turret with these, so definitely going to want to find a mask, or you're going to have one heck of a time doing the mask for these as well. Alright, so this is our last clear sprue, and our main canopy again looks very nice on that. We have our upper turret glass, again very nice and clear on that, and then we have our ball turret right here, nice and clear on the glass there, even though if you have it sitting on the ground, it's going to be in the tucked position, so you're really not going to be able to see any of it, but it is going to look very nice, especially if you have it hanging from the ceiling and have this lowered out. It's going to look very nice. It did fall off, but the nice thing is it is all wrapped in this nice bubble wrap, so it is fairly well protected. Alright, moving on to our first gray plastic with looks like some of our fuselage details, the interior details. Very nice framing detail right here, and then on this part we do have some very nice framing and bolt detail going along on this piece right here, so very impressive on that. The rest of the detail again looks pretty decent. We don't have a bunch of cabling or anything like that going on, but the detail does look okay. We do have ejector pin nubs right here that we're going to need to cut off on all of these pieces, but again, not too bad on the detail on the opposite side. Now I'm not seeing any ejector pin marks on any of these pieces right here, which you might be able to see on that. So very nice work on the ejector pin placements, and for some of the detail, like especially on this piece right here and on the opposite side, again some very nice detail on that. Alright, so this is our engine sprue, and the engines, honestly, they look trash. Just speaking honestly, they this looks like it was molded back in the 70s, that level of detail, and up to today's standard, with this being a new mold, only 4 or 5 years old, I am surprised with how bad these engines look. So that is the major downfall of this kit so far, is just the lack of engine detail on this. It just does not look good at all. The fuselage detail, like on the engine cowls, the panel lines and rivets, they do look okay. They do look a little bit soft, especially going around the bend right here, but I mean, they do look like they at least have it there, so that way you can have it as a guide, and you can go in and highlight the panels and the rivets and make it a little bit deeper, just going through with a hobby knife or whatever, or your scriber and riveter, and that would be okay. And the same thing with the superchargers here. They look okay, but I do know like Edward, they have superchargers, at least for the B-17. I'm not sure about the B-24 yet, but those just look 100 times better than what this looks, in my opinion. This is my opinion. So engines and superchargers are definitely, so far, and the metal landing gear, so far, are getting added to the list for this kit to be for aftermarket for this. But everything else, like the propellers, they look nice. They are like a knife edge, very thin on the edges right here. And then again, with these pieces on the fuselage, the panel line and rivet detail is very nice and crisp, and no issues with any of that. Flip it over to the other side, you're not going to be able to see any of this stuff, so there's no issues with any of that. But again, yeah, we get 2 of these sprues as well. So, alright, so moving on to our bomb bay doors. Again, the rivet detail on here is pretty nice. So just moving around on this. And then we go to the other side. We do have some ejector pin marks right here on all of these. But here's the thing. The way that the bomb bay doors opened up on the B-24, they slid up against the fuselage. So even if you have them open, you're not going to be able to see any of these ejector pin marks. So no issues with any of that. Now for the cabling detail for inside the bomb bay, that does look very nice and nicely detailed on there. So it's going to take a paint really nice, and it is spaced far enough apart so painting it with the brush should not be any issue at all. And the same with this side as well. Alright, so moving forward with the next sprue, we have a bunch of other little detail parts going through here that I'm not sure exactly what they are for. Maybe these are some ammo cans going on, and these are our bomb racks right here. Again, rather juvenile on the detail right here. It looks, if this was a kit from the 80s, 70s, or even the early 90s, I would be expecting this level of detail on a kit. But a kit coming from the 2020s or even the late 2010s, I'm just kind of, and especially from a big manufacturer like Hobby Boss / Trumpeter, I'm kind of disappointed in the lack of detail on these parts going forward on this. So, alright, and then moving forward, we have some more bulkheads in here. Our instrument panel does look fairly nice on here. Definitely the decal sheet, the dials should fall right into those holes right there, and then you just put some UV resin to get that glass look on your dials. You should be able to see a good amount of that at least, and the rest of the cockpit with the glass on that. We do have our wheel hubs. Again, the wheels look okay on the detail, some nice bolt detail on that. And then we have all the other parts. This is our belly for our ball turret right in here. And then our guns, our 50 cal guns. Let's see, the tips are not drilled out, but there is some nice detail on the body of the gun right there. So for injection molding, this is pretty nice, but it's not like a wow factor. It's not like a Wingnut Wings quality on the guns right here. Alright, now moving on to our next sprue with the tailplane right here. We do have some nice panel line and rivet detail on this right here, and it is a big tailplane. I mean, this is probably a foot, almost a foot long right here. So that's definitely going to be a large piece. And then, so yeah, the panel lines and the rivets, very nice on the exterior right here. I will have to do some research because I do think that this thing was pretty riddled down with rivets that were on here. So I'm going to have to do some research. I'm hoping that maybe I go through and I re-rivet everything really to make everything pop. but everything else on here does look nice, and it is a good starting point for your riveting and panel lines. Alright, so moving on to our vertical stabilizers and our rudders. Again, very nice rivet detail and panel line detail on here, and the plastic is a nice strength and thickness. It's not too brittle or anything like that, so again, it's going to be really nice. Take a wash really nice as well, and really going to look good when it's all done. Flip it over to the other side. We just have a couple of ejector pin nubs to knock off, but that shouldn't be an issue right there. Alright, so up next we have our ailerons right here, and then our flight deck. Flight deck does have some nice rivet detail in here, and then some nice panel lines right through there. And then we have some nice ribbing going on this piece. You're not going to be able to see much of this though, so that's my one kind of issue with that. And then again, some nice panel line and rivet detail on our ailerons. We flip it over to the other side. This portion is going to be our part of our nose landing gear bay, and there are ejector pin marks all over the place in here. Luckily, with the nose being so low to the ground, you're really not going to be able to see inside of there, so no worries with any of that. And then all the other parts are parts that you're not going to be able to see, and the ejector pin marks are all over those pieces right there. So on this sprue, some nice placement of the ejection pin marks, and then a fairly decent amount of detail moving along right here. We do have some raised panel or raised lines right here with our rivets inside of that, so that's some nice detail in there as well. Alright, so moving on, we have the sprue with our wing spar and a couple other detail pieces for the interior of the fuselage. This wing spar, absolutely beefy. I mean, this thing is strong. I am trying to bend it and it is not bending whatsoever, so that is definitely going to help support the weight of the wings. I wish they would have taken that into consideration when they're doing the landing gear, because the landing gear I do not think has, I think that's going to fold within the first couple months, if it even makes it off the workbench, with the landing gear strength with that. So, but again, moving on to the rest of it, some very nice detail right along here. I think this might be our bomb bay right here. We do have some nice cabling through that, and then a few other small parts to go onto here. On the opposite side, we do have a couple ejector pin marks on here, but I'm not sure. I don't think you would be seeing any of this most likely anyways. Okay, so moving on, we have a bunch of other little detail parts, and these are the landing gear struts right here. Again, they have plastic core and not metal core to go inside of this piece, which, I mean, that just baffles me on that. So again, sorry, I'm getting a little bit antsy and all that stuff and moving around in my seat, but the landing gear, yeah, just it baffles me on why they didn't do metal core and then have these struts on the outside. And then we have the throttle quadrant right here that has some very nice detail on that, and then just all the other little detail pieces that go. We have a boarding ladder right here. We flip it over to the other side. No real issues with anything on this side. No ejector pin marks on the inside of the landing gear doors right here, so that's nice. Alright, moving on, we have another sprue. It has our guns right here. Again, not drilled out on the tips, and these are one piece. Some decent detail on those going through. I don't know if these might be your turret guns, but yeah, some nice detail on those. And then everything else, I believe, is for the turret. We do have the landing gear wheel hubs right here. Again, basic detail on those wheel hubs right there. And everything else is just basic detail. Alright, so moving on to our next sprue, we have some plastic protective wrap over this piece right here, which I don't know why you would need a plastic protection over that one piece. It doesn't look like it's a very brittle piece. The horns that are on here are rather thick, comparatively speaking, like to this piece right here, which looks like it'd be very easy to get knocked off. So I'm not sure about that. And then all the other detail on here does look fairly nice. Guns, again, those are in one piece as well. And then we have just a bunch of other little detail parts for our turrets right through there. Alright, so moving on, this sprue is actually pretty heavy, alright. We have more ailerons right through here, so maybe one of them was our flaps and then this is our ailerons going on. We do have some very nice panel line and rivet detail on the engine nozzles right here. Again, gonna have to do some research and check and see the rivets, because I'm pretty sure that there were a lot more rivets than what are on this model, so I'll have to double check that. And again, flipping over to the other side, you're not going to see any of this stuff, so no issues with any of that. Alright, moving right along, we have the sprue with our bombs. We get two of these sprues right here. The bombs do look very nice. The bomb fins actually look pretty thin. I mean, they're a little bit thick, but I mean, for injection molding, those are actually pretty thin right there. And then we have some handles right here, again with the connection point being right in the middle of the handle right there. Kind of one of my pet peeves of modeling is that right there, putting the connection point right there instead of right at the end of the part. So again, we have some oxygen bottles too. Those look fairly nice and detailed on that, and then our control yoke right here. So all this like little detail does look okay. I'm sure it's going to help liven up the inside that you're not going to be able to see anyways. So then we have another gun with two halves right here, and then again the barrels just they look toyish in my opinion. Definitely going to want to change out the barrels with some metal gun barrels. Alright, so moving on to our next sprue. This is a giant sprue, and this is of our wings. Wings are in one piece, zoomed out, and you can see how big those are. I am not a small guy. I am about 6'2", and my hands are a decent size, and you can see how big these wings are. Trying to find something that is relatively common in size to show roughly this. Alright, just use so a Windex bottle. That's how big the wings are. Shows you right there. I mean, that's a standard Windex bottle right there, and that's how big these wings are. In comparison, total fuselage length of the PBY Catalina right there. As you can see, it's almost from the tip, maybe minus a couple inches right there. So that gives you a hint on how big these wings are. Alright, so moving on from the pure size of them, the plastic does feel very nice. It feels thick, like it's strong enough to hold the weight. We do have some very nice crisp panel lines and rivets through here, but again, I'm going to have to look in, and I just feel like there should be a lot more rivets on this aircraft. So I'm definitely going to do some research on that. Then we have our ailerons right here as well for that. So these wings, we get one of these. These are the uppers, and then up next we'll have the lowers. Alright, so moving on to our lower wings right here. Again, the panel line and rivet detail looks to be like it's going to be a good starting point for that. So just moving forward with that, you can see all the panel line and rivet detail hopefully moving right through there. And then on this side, the same thing. Now, one thing I wanted to point out on these wings, and it's the same thing with the uppers, we have this area right here that's going to house that massive wing spar that we had to go into the kit, and then it also goes in right here. And then we have, for the outer wings, we also have these nice beefy support struts going all the way down lengthwise and widthwise right there. So again, very nice. That's really going to help the support of these wings and prevent them from drooping anytime soon. And then also we have these pieces right here. I'm not sure where these pieces go. Look like they're going to go somewhere in the fuselage. But again, some nice framing detail through that as well. Alright, moving on to our last sprue, and this is of our fuselage halves. And again, the fuselage on here is massive. Alright, and it's all in one piece right here, so we're not going to be connecting it by sections, kind of like how the HK Models B-17 is. So just looking at the detail on here, again, very nice panel line and rivet detail on here. It does actually look very crisp, and it's going to take a wash really nice, and it looks like it goes around the bends very alright. So on the rivets right here that go right around the bend, they kind of go into a teardrop shape on those rivets. So that's the one downside of that right there. It's just around that bend right in here and here. That's the only place where I'm seeing the teardrop rivets on it. But other than that, all the other detail on here does look very nice. Again, I think it's going to be a starting point. I think definitely going to need to go in and re-rivet some of this aircraft and add more rivet lines to it. But the exterior detail does look very nice as a starting point. Now we flip it over to the other side. Again, very nice. And actually, there are no ejector pin marks on the inside of this aircraft whatsoever. I am not seeing any ejector pin marks. So some very nice doing right there. Some nice framing that's really going to help support the weight. And then even on the back section, we have a little bit of framing. Again, I'm not sure on how much of this you're going to be able to see. Especially, I think there's a clear part that goes over that. So again, very nice. And you're going to have a bunch of little boxes and stuff that go in there as well. And then the bomb bay, again, not going to be able to see much of it because it does sit really low to the ground unless you put a mirror on it. But again, some nice detail. Even with the front cockpit, we do have a little bit of detail there, and we're going to have a bunch of radio boxes and such that go up on that as well. So again, very nice detail, nice texture to the plastic on here. So alright, so that does it for the Hobby Boss 132nd B-24J Liberator. My thoughts on the kit. So, downfalls first. The engines. WTF. Those just look like absolute garbage. They look like they're something I'm expecting from this kit, which is, okay, 2018 is what it says on the box right here. So it's 7 years old. The molding looks like it was something done back in the 70s or 80s. Honestly, the engines just do not look good at all. So I'm definitely going to be looking into getting some aftermarket engines for this. the landing gear with the plastic inserts to the struts. It baffles me why they went with plastic instead of metal for the inserts. So that is another thing that I'm going to have to look into getting, is some metal landing gear for this kit, because I do not think that is going, the plastic inserts for the landing gear that they have are going to be even close to strong enough to hold up the weight of this kit, with especially with how heavy the plastic is for the wings and the fuselage and everything. This is going to be a very heavy kit when it's done. And then the superchargers. The superchargers look they look so-so. They don't look great, but they don't look bad. And that's going to be something that is definitely visible from the underside of the aircraft, because they are rather large. The bomb racks, again, the detail on them look like they were molded the same time frame as the engines. The detail just isn't there. But with that being said, they're going to be behind bombs, and they're going to be in the bomb bay, which you can't really see inside of that well because it is so low to the deck right there. So it's kind of a trade-off for me. It's like, the bomb bay, the bomb racks, okay. It's not a huge deal for that. But moving on to the positive sides of this, some of the interior detail did look very nice. It doesn't look like, it's not up to Wingnut Wings standard right there, but it is a good starting off point. I think this whole kit is just a good starting off point for everything. The fuselage detail, the wing detail with the rivets and panel lines, they are very nice and crisp. But I'm gonna have to double check, but I do believe, if I can recall correctly from going to the Dayton Air Force Museum and seeing the B-24 in there, I think I recall there being a lot more rivets on that aircraft. So I'm just gonna have to do a double check. I think I might even go through my photo albums, because we just went to the museum a couple months ago. So yeah, so that's where we're standing with that. It looks like it's going to be a good starting off point for detail wise. Now the kit, I'm hoping it goes together well. I think either this one or the B-24D, I'm not sure which one yet, is going to be part of my Bomber Blitz, probably starting next year, where I'm going to do the HK models, B-17, one of these B-24s, the Avro Lancaster from Border Models, also Border Models if they release the HE-111 in time as well. I'll be doing that, and then maybe a B-25. We'll see about that. So that's what's coming up for next year in 2026. I'm planning on doing a Bomber Blitz, which is going to be absolutely massive. I'm definitely going to have to figure out some room for that build, for that whole deal. But again, I'm thinking that this kit is like I said, a good starting out point. If you don't do anything to it, it's still going to look good when you do it. I'm hoping that the fit on this is good. I really do like how they strengthened up the wings. That's another positive that I have for this kit. And the Mayakin decals do look good. The other decals kind of look cartoonish to me as well. So definitely not going to be using any of those. But the Mayakin one, I'm pretty sure that's the one I'm going to be going with. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this inbox review. I hope it answered any questions that you had and helped you if you were on the fence about getting this kit, either yes or no. And then also let me know down in the comments on if you've built this kit before, if you had any issues with it, or what you did to correct any of the issues that were in the kit. So again, I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment down below. Hit the bell button for notifications of when I post future videos, which is daily. And until next time, have a great day. Stay frosty and happy modeling.